Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee, we're going to be checking out and showing you how to install the etrailer.com Universal Brake Controller Install Kit. So this kit is going to allow you to do a few things. Probably the big one being allow you to use a brake controller. So it's going to provide us with the 7-way here and the necessary wiring and things of that nature to be able to hook a brake controller up to it. Now granted, you are going to have to get a separate brake controller, one that's not included with the kit, but everything is there, generally speaking, to get it all hooked up. The only thing that I had to add to ours was a no-drill long bracket. That way I could actually mount this up. It's also going to provide us with a 7-way, so the 7-way round type connector. And so we're going to have all the outputs back here, you know, our electric brake, our 12-volt auxiliary power, our turn signals, our running lights, and everything else. So that'll really cover your bases as far as having everything operate. Something that's pretty neat that you don't really see a whole lot is the fact that we're still able to maintain our 4-way flat connector too. So that way if you pull a bunch of different trailers, you know, you don't have to worry about getting an adapter. You know, I'm sure a lot of you have seen those. You plug it into the 7-way and it, you know, comes out a little bit and gives you this. So that eliminates the need to buy a separate component or keep track of it or whatever. We have it all right here, which is pretty nice. I will say with this setup, you are going to need existing 4-way flat connector wiring to hook this up. In our case today, we use the Curt 4-way flat connector wiring. Worked out really well. I believe there's a kit by Takancha as well. Either one of those, it's going to work. You have to have it existing though, that way this can receive its signals and you're able to actually wire everything up properly. Other than that though, pretty straightforward kit. You know, you do want to check and make sure if you do happen to have a factory tow package, you'll have a round type connector plug kind of up here behind your bumper. And if that's what you have, you can get you know, some different wiring that essentially just kind of plugs in, and then you plug your brake controller in underneath the dash. With that said, a lot of times though, you'll have to go to the dealership and have them reflash a PCM, or they do run through a process to kind of activate all of that equipment. So something to think about. If you don't have that stuff or don't want to deal with that, this is a great solution for you to be able to use a brake controller. As far as the installation goes, I'm not gonna lie, it's time consuming. Nothing really complicated about it. It just takes some time, you know, running all the wires and getting everything right in the way you want it. You know, it just eats up a little bit of the day. So set a little bit of time to the side for sure. I did mention I had to use this extra long bracket to get this bracket mounted up. And I also had to use a little bit of extra wiring, just how we had to route the wires and things like that. We just fell a little bit short. So I would suggest picking up, you know, I'd say a solid good 8 to 10 foot, be on the safe side, maybe even 12, just so you have it and don't fall short and have to run to the store and waste some time there. So yeah, other than that though, why don't we go ahead, kind of get started and put this on together now. To begin our installation for our brake controller install kit, first thing I'm going to do is just kind of prep our harness here. You don't have to do this, but what I'm doing is switching out these pre-attached butt connectors for the heat shrink ones. You know, if you have these laying around the house, great. If not, these will work just fine, but these do provide us with a little more protection against corrosion. So all I'm going to do is cut that old one off. Strip back the wiring, and you can use this method for any type of butt connection that we're going to make here during this install. I twist that wire, and take the connector, slide that over, and then crimp it down. And so you probably figured out, I already did this one. And so what we're using is just the black and blue wire. There's a yellow wire as well that I just taped up, and this is for if you want to use your reverse light, have a reverse lights working. So you know, this will be for those of you that maybe you're pulling a boat with surge brakes, or if you have some type of reverse lights on your trailer that you want hooked up. If that's what you do, you would use this wire to tap into your reverse light circuit on your vehicle. But most people ain't worried about it. Our customer isn't, so I just taped it up to keep it out of the way. With that said, now let's go ahead and get this thing mounted up. So I got our bracket set up here on our hitch. The kit comes with this one, this piece here, but the problem is on the Jeep, there's nowhere to attach it. So what I did was use what's called the no drill long bracket, which is this here. That way it clamps around the hitch and gives us a spot to actually mount up this bracket. So with that said, we're gonna take our wires, feed them on through. Hopefully we got enough space to kind of run them underneath our plastic there, which we do. Get this one through as well. Get this set up how we want it here. This 4-way flat, that's eventually going to get mounted in here. But I'll kind of just leave it hang for now. But all you're going to do is take a bolt, run it through, and then on the back side of it, I'm gonna get my hardware together here. I'll show you guys. On the back side of it, you're just gonna take a flat washer, a split lock washer, and a nut. So I use that same hardware combination for our 3 remaining corners and then just come back and tighten it down. So now underneath our vehicle, here's where our wiring comes through. What we're gonna do is this 4-way coming off of our new 7-way, I'm just gonna cut this cap off. And then this is gonna get plugged into our existing 4-way flat wiring. So what I like to do though is take some dielectric grease. You can grab it here at eTrailer. It just put some over the terminals to help prevent corrosion and things of that nature. So give that a good coating. And this is simply just going to plug right in. If I can manage to line them up here, just like that. So what I went ahead and did is taped up our connection there, our 4-ways real good, and then I just put a zip tie around them to make it semi-permanent. That way, you know, don't come loose over time, and just secured it here. Now we can take our white wire with the pre-attached ring terminal, this one here. That's going to be a ground, so we need to attach it to the body of our vehicle. Right here we have a thick, solid, clean piece of metal, so that'll work perfect. I'm gonna take the provided self-tapping screw and get it secured here. Now we have 2 more wires to hook up here, the ones that we put those butt connectors on. These are going to get connected to your duplex wiring here. So the big bundle of it, take one end, cut this gray sheathing off, that'll expose 2 wires underneath, a white one and a black one. Strip back the insulation some. The black wire is going to get connected to the black wire coming from our 7-way. So we'll put that in and crimp it down. And the white wire, that's going to get connected to the blue wire coming out of our 7-way. So same deal here. And since I'm using the heat shrinks, I'll come back with a heat source and seal up the ends. So went ahead, taped up our connections there just for some extra protection. zip tied it, got everything secure. Now we can start to route our gray duplex wiring. So I just ran it through here, up and over the bumper. A little tricky to see, but it comes out right there. Ran it along through here. You want to avoid any hot or moving parts while you're routing this, and use the zip ties to secure it along the way. Up through here and over our subframe. So you can see kind of a piece of it there, where it comes up. Drops down right here. And then runs along the side of our vehicle. So our pinch weld, every now and again, has some holes in it. So I just use some zip ties to kind of secure it along the length of it. So all the way down, and then up through here we have our wheel well liner, and there's a couple of options you can do. It's going to be kind of tricky to see, but there's a grommet that you could pull out and cut a hole in and run your wire through it, or there's a kind of a plastic tube that you could run it up through. I actually was shooting for the grommet and made it through the tube kind of accidentally. It's probably going to be easier to use a grommet, but either one works. So that's going to run up and into the engine compartment. So here in the engine compartment, over here on the driver's side, this is where our wiring comes up. And right here, you want to get rid of all that gray sheathing. So you want to separate the two individual wires, you know. The white one, this is going to go inside the vehicle eventually. We'll just kind of let this sit tight and hang for now. The black wire, this is going to get routed over towards the passenger side. That way it can go to a power source. So that wire just comes through here. Drill the small hole in the panel. That way you could run your wire through. And I just followed the firewall. So I ran it all the way across. Continuing along there, using some zip ties every now and again. And that wire is going to go to some breakers. So I have them mounted up and everything. Pretty straightforward. You want to use the 20 amp breaker and the 40 amp breaker. And I just use the provided self-tapping screws to secure them to that panel there. So here's kind of a different look at them. This is our 40 amp breaker and our 20 amp breaker. All right, and so that black wire that we ran over here, you're going to connect that to the silver post on our 40 amp breaker. So you can cut it to length, crimp on a small ring terminal, slide it over the stud, and then use a 3/8 socket to tighten down that nut. From there, you're going to take another length of wire. You'll have some left over, a couple foot probably. You know, cut a 6 or 8 inch piece. Put it on the gold post. Just put the small ring terminal on one end of the wire, put it over that gold post on the 40 amp breaker, tighten down the nut. The other side of that wire, you're going to put on a big ring terminal. As far as the 20 amp breaker is concerned, you're going to use a small ring terminal on the gold post, a large ring terminal on the other end, and eventually these are going to go to our power supply here, the power stud. We're not going to hook them up just yet though. So that leaves one more post here on our 20 amp breaker, the silver post. You're going to take a small ring terminal, and I did have to use some extra wires. We just did not have the length. The way this Jeep's set up is kind of a little bit different with the power supply being all the way over here. So I did have some extra wiring. I would suggest probably, I don't know, I'd say at least 10 foot of it, just to play it safe and give you more than what you need. May be able to get away with 8, but it could get a little tight. So need that extra wire. And this one, from the silver post on our 20 amp breaker, that's going to run back over to the driver's side. So I simply just followed that same path that we used to get the wires in here in the first place. Just ran them along through the firewall. So before we run our black wire and our white wire in through the firewall to the inside of our vehicle, now's a great time to also hook up the ground wire. So again, I just have maybe a 4-foot piece of additional black wire here, crimped on a ring terminal, and use this post here as a ground. So you are going to have to get a nut. If you don't have one, you can always just use a self-tapping screw and screw into the body of your vehicle. Obviously, just make sure it makes sense. You're not going to drill into an important component, you know. But I just utilize that. So that wire runs in through there. And then what I had to do was, it might be kind of tricky to see, I used a drill bit, maybe about 3/8 in size, and drilled a hole through the firewall. Now when you're doing this, be really careful. You know, you don't want to drill into any components that are important. So that area there that I chose is pretty much wide open, so pretty good shape. So once I had that hole drilled, I took our ground wire that we added and the white and black wire and simply fed them through that opening to the underside of our dash inside of our Jeep. So inside of our Jeep, here's where our wires came through. I've stripped back the ends and crimped on butt connectors. This one here, that's our ground wire. I put some yellow paint on it just to, you know, that way we don't get them mixed up. And other than hooking up our ring terminals to the battery, that power source under the hood, this is pretty much it for the universal brake controller install kit. From here, you would simply just hook up to your brake controller pigtail connector using the instructions. Generally speaking, they're all going to be very, very similar. You're going to have a white wire, which is ground. So this one would go to our ground. The black wire would go to the black wire here from our brake controller install kit. The blue wire would go to the white one from our brake controller install kit, and then the red goes to your brake light switch. So that's the majority of them are set up like that, so chances are pretty good yours is too. But what you're going to do is get this connected, at least these 3 wires. And then once these are connected, then we can go under the hood and connect to the battery. So back under the hood, there's our power supply stud. If you have trailer wiring that used a fuse to connect here, take that fuse out for now. Then once we have it back hooked up, you can plug that back in. But we're going to use a 13mm socket to undo the stud there, or the nut rather. And then we can take our 2 wires, simply place them over like so, and then we'll just tighten this back down. Now it's a good idea to test everything to make sure it's working. So that top corner of our test box, you can see we have our 12-volt auxiliary power. We'll try our left turn signal, our right turn signal, our brakes, our running lights, and we'll hit our brake controller manual override. And we have the output being sent back there as well. So everything is functioning properly. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the etrailer.com Universal Brake Controller Install Kit on our 2018 Jeep Grand Cherokee.